Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the latest news that Christmas is going to be saved, sort of, but not by the Prime Minister, but by the EU. Couldn't make it up, could you? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So when it comes to this tosh about saving Christmas, we mean a different thing in 2021 as compared to 2020. See, in 2020, saving Christmas was all about being able to have the extended family around the table for dinner. This didn't go well, as a lot of people died from COVID as a result of this Christmas save. This year, saving Christmas means something entirely different. Apparently, the pandemic has gone away, or so you would think from the mainstream media. Apparently, we don't continue to have the worst death rate in Europe. The fact that our current number of daily deaths is over double what it was this time last year when we didn't have vaccines, apparently that's nothing to worry about at all. So no, COVID is apparently of no concern this Christmas. What is of concern is less about getting people around the table and more about putting food on that table. Not that they won't be able to put food as such on the table before people go mad, as the food industry leaders keep telling us there will be food, just not necessarily the same choice of food that we have been used to over the past few decades of EU membership, which is why people are being advised to stock up on Christmas treats. You know, I mean, here we've been freezing a roulade, gammon joint. I kid you not, I am doing the headline, Brexit, Britain runs out of gammon when the time comes. We've also been stocking up on some other Christmas treats, you know, not normal food, full confidence that, you know, you can go in and get groceries, just not some of the, it's like, you know, you may have to amend your list. And you may not be able to get some of the Christmas luxuries that you'd normally get. I certainly wouldn't be leaving it until December to get them. But although starving would be pretty bad for the government, apparently even just not being able to get the usual Christmas food won't go down with the public well either. So Boris Johnson is going to save Christmas, the Express said. Never mind that they also said this last year. And look how that went. Homer Simpson has a better track record of saving Christmases than Boris Johnson. As far as I know, he never actually killed thousands of people with a Yuletide cock-up. So one of the main icons of the Christmas dinner is the turkey. No idea for the life of me. I have never understood why people who wouldn't touch turkey for 51 weeks of the year suddenly want it for every meal of every day for one entire week, all of a sudden. But it is what it is. Only we can't produce enough turkeys. A shortage of workers already meant that British producers were not going to meet demand. They told us that a month ago. And then we were hit with the carbon dioxide shortage as well, knackering the whole thing. So from British producers having the capacity to supply all of our needs, we've now gone to needing help from the EU in order to feed people's appetites for a bird that no bugger eats throughout the rest of the year. We're going to be importing hundreds of thousands of turkeys, mainly from France and Poland, it's estimated. This is despite the government U-turning on its visa policy and allowing in, as well as, you know, about 5,000 lorry drivers, potentially if they can get them, about 5,500 poultry workers into the country, you know, to help save Christmas. I think they've even been told that Priti Patel now won't throw them into the sea on Christmas Day, you know, as a special Yuletide treat, because she's full of compassion, you know. She said so. And that's telling in itself, because this move, which is a weaker, more petulant policy than the one the poultry industry have been calling for months ago, really, has only come about when we pass the point of no return. You know, that this policy is now in place means that the government were prepared to go along with the idea of immigration to meet our labour needs. And given that they were prepared to go along with it, despite resistance, the question has to be asked, so why didn't they do it early enough to have the desired outcome? If the purpose of this policy is to save Christmas, why didn't they do it in time to save Christmas? Christmas food is prepared from like July, August time. It's now too late. And the thing is, there isn't really a good answer to this one that I can think of, because it has come too late. We may well be allowing visas for poultry workers now, but again, it's this attitude that you can't just turn, you know, immigration on like a tap and then off again when you don't want it. You know, there's not a queue of people beating the doors on the country to get in, but that seems to be how they treat it. You know, the fact of the matter is, even with this policy, we are now definitely reliant on EU imports for turkey, which was never the case before Brexit. They also can't claim that they just learned from the situation and this will help us in the future, because the government have vowed that this is a strictly time-limited policy to save this Christmas and it will not be repeated. Now, of course, they say things and then go back on their word lots of times, but let us say that they mean it this time. So if it is just for Christmas, but it's too late for this Christmas and it won't be repeated for next Christmas, what was the point? The government can't possibly say that they were keeping an eye on how things were going and then acted when there was no alternative. The action is too late. This can only be because either the government thought that the situation wouldn't get this bad, in which case they were overruling expert information with mindless optimism, or they thought that it would get this bad, but that it wouldn't be too politically expensive for them. Potentially, they thought they could get away with less choice of food and sell it as the price for sovereignty, whenever that's going to be delivered. I haven't seen any yet. But maybe they didn't anticipate the myriad other compounding factors, like the gas shortage upon which we're critically reliant, and problems in distributing other things that we needed. Workers, we just don't have enough workers in the country. Petrol as well has been an issue. Apparently that's now fine everywhere, apart from the south and the southeast of England, which is unfortunately where the Tory voters live. Or maybe this is a bit like with the COVID response, where it isn't the case that the government either knew and did nothing or didn't believe the predictions. It might have been a good old-fashioned bun fight amongst ministers too busy arguing to actually make any decisions. Maybe there were ministers pushing for these visas and the nihilistic Home Secretary simply refused until the Prime Minister overruled her. And Boris Johnson is known for never making tough decisions ever. The lockdowns were late, for example, because Johnson always waited until there was no alternative. He refused to make the decision when it was needed. He waited until everyone else could see there was no alternative. As such, there was no decision as such. The same may have applied here, only this decision wasn't just late, but too late to do what they wanted. As things currently stand, and I'll remind people that the government are changing their policies on an almost daily basis, but as things currently stand, the last of these visas runs out about March of next year. So come March of next year, we're back to where we were, unless, of course, the government have a longer-term plan to make sure we don't end up in the mess we find ourselves in now. Now, I have no doubt that their scheme to get more HGV drivers, for example, qualified by cutting corners, by not asking them to be able to demonstrate anything as unnecessary as being able to drive an actual lorry, is part of the plan. Like I've said before, we could manage with a shortage of lorry drivers. We've had a shortage of lorry drivers in the past. We just need to get back above the threshold where it's manageable. And it's possible that the government think that their reforms to HGV driver testing will do that. Will it? No, of course not. But like I said, this is a government who thought that they could simply wish away the EU worker shortage by telling businesses to sort it out. They don't seem to realise that there simply aren't enough workers in this country. I do not think, when looking ahead to next year, that we can factor in any assumption that the government have a firm grasp on important facts. And this wheeze to make driving tests easier does nothing to increase the number of domestic workers in food production either, whether meat or crops. If we can't produce as much food, we're going to need more imports of food. That we will have to import more fruit and veg next year is certain, because planting has already begun and farms have been planting less. Anticipating the same labour shortages next year as they had this. And it could still get worse for them, because farms were allowed some visas for seasonal workers without Priti Patel's objections. So they were actually in a relatively good place. They didn't have enough, but they had some. But even those could be lost in the near future, meaning that the harvest will be smaller still. So I guess we'll be looking to the EU to save Christmas next year as well, and the year after. Of course, we always imported quite a bit of food from other European countries for Christmas, but we'll be doing much more of it now, which then raises the inevitable question as to what happens when we raise trade barriers still further by imposing import checks on EU goods. It's going to be a bit of a problem, isn't it? Any plan for that? Not one that I have seen. But I think my next video may need to touch on that, as the aforementioned Home Secretary seems to have come up with a cracking idea for buggering up our trade even further. But I think that'll have to wait till tomorrow. Until then, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.